Okay. This is like my third try, so I can do this. It's gonna be fine. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, today is day 1 of subtracting mixed numbers with borrowing. I know I'm not here. You're gonna watch the video. You're gonna take the notes with the video. If you do not feel confident pressing pause, rewatching the video, doing that, give it a shot today. If you don't understand it, that's okay. We will come back to it, and it's obviously we're going to be doing this for a while because it is a hard skill. There is also a backup math sheet that is without borrowing if you are completely lost and you're like, I'm out. But I do expect you to still take the notes that goes with it, and I want you to give a couple of them a shot. Okay, and you can check them on the answer key and see if that worked for you. So we're going to start with notes. So you have your notes. You should have them glued in your notebook. And then you are going to watch my screen, and I'm going to walk you through the steps of how you guys are going to subtract these mixed numbers while needing to borrow and knowing when do I need to borrow. Okay, so I'm going to put my iPad up on my screen. Oh, I'm sorry. I just did it to the TV. There it goes. Okay. So this is where you're starting at today. So these are your notes for today. All right. So our steps that we have, number 1 is to line up your mixed numbers vertically. And then down here, I have left your little notes for you. So this is what it would look like to line up your mixed numbers vertically. So your problem that we're doing today is 4 1/8 minus 3 3/4. Okay, so number 1 shows me how I would line those up vertically. Then number 2 is the same as what we've been doing. We are looking at the fractions and we are finding the common denominator. Okay, so we're ignoring the whole numbers. Find my common denominator. So 4 times 2 is 8. My 8 is what's up on top. So I know that I can do an 8 on the bottom. And then 3 times 2 is 6, and my 6 would go on the top. So to find my common denominator, I now have 8 on the bottom and top. We skip counted 4, and we said 4 times 2 is 8. And now I'm looking at step 3. Okay, so we've done this part so far. Step 3 is finding out, do I need to borrow? So here's how I know that. I'm looking at my numerator on both of them. And then in this part right here where it says larger, you're going to cross that out because I messed up. You need to write the word smaller. Okay, so when I rewrite my problem, my 4 1/8 is always going to go on the top. It's always going to go first because that's the first number. My second number is always going to go on the bottom because it's the second number. Okay, so on this one, I have 4 1/8. My numerator is a 1. That is smaller than 6. So I can't take 6 away if there's only 1 there. If there's only 1 circle, I can't magically take 6 because there's only 1 there. So I could take 1, but I can't take 6. So I can't do that. I'm going to have to borrow. So to borrow, I'm going to go to my whole number. So here's my whole number 4. I'm going to borrow from it, and I'm going to make it a 3. When I take away a whole number and I'm turning it into parts, I'm going to add the fraction 1 and like 1 over like 1 whole. I'm taking my 1 whole and I'm turning it into a fraction. So to do that, this is step 4 down here. So I borrowed, I have my 3, and I am turning my 8/8 is my fraction. So I've taken my 1 whole and I've turned it into a fraction. So what I'm going to do to show that I've taken that 1 whole and I've turned it into a fraction is I'm going to put a big bubble 1 around it. So now I'm able to add my 1/8 and my 8/8 so that I have enough pieces to subtract from. Okay, and I'm going to show you this with my polypad in a second so that you can see the visual of exactly what I'm doing when I take 1 whole and I turn it into the pieces. Okay, so I'm taking my 1 plus my 8 and I get a 9. my number of pieces to make my whole stays the same. So my denominator stays the same. So I have eighths. And then I borrowed from my 4, so now my 4 becomes a 3. So I'm taking my 3 and my 9/8 minus 3 and 6/8. And now I can do this. This is what we've done before. So 9 minus 6 is 3. My denominator stays the same. 3 minus 3 is 0. So I can leave there as no whole, or I can put a 0 in there. Okay, so that's what you're showing on this side. So for step 5, you just subtract like normal. Okay, so now I want to show you my polypad to show you what that looked like, okay? So I'm going to take the same fractions. So right here, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 whole fractions. So these are wholes. So I have 4, and I have 1/8 over here. So 4 and 1/8. Now I'm going to take that, and I'm going to subtract, and I have 1, 2, 3 wholes over here, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6/8. So I'm showing you I have made my fraction bars into the exact same fractions that I just showed you. Now what we said was that I can't take 6 away from 1 because there aren't 6 here for me to take away from. Oh, it didn't like me. There it goes. Okay, so like this one right here, there's only 1 to take away from. I can't take away from that because there's only 1 there. I can't take 6 away from that. So I'm going to make it so there are 6. So I'm going to take this bottom fraction bar right here, and I'm going to press split. And I'm going to split my tiles, okay? So until I get to 8ths, because I want them to be equivalent. So now I have 8ths. And when I look at my 8ths, it's equivalent. I had my 1. It's showing that it is the same distance. It's not further. It's the same as my 1, so it's equivalent. But now I have 8 pieces. And if I take the 8 that I have here, and I have the 1 that I had before, now I have 9/8, but I still have 1, 2, 3 wholes. So now I can take 3 and 9/8, and I can subtract my 6 from that because now I have more than 6 of those 8ths pieces. Okay, 9 minus 6 is 3. So if I took away mine, and let me split them. Okay, so now if I take away, I can take away 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so I've taken away those 6. So these 6 are gone now. And then I'm going to minus 3. So I'm minusing 1, 2, 3. So I've taken away those 3 because those ones match up, and I have 3 and 1, 2, 3/8. Oh, sorry, I need to delete these because I took them away. So let me go to my eraser. Will it let me do it? There we go. So I'm taking those ones away, and I'm taking these ones away. And that one can go too. So what I have left is only 3/8. Okay, so I've taken my fractions and I broke them apart so that I could make myself a whole. All right, now we're going to try it with this one down here. So this is where you're taking notes with me. Okay, you should have the same things on your screen as on your paper as I do on my screen. So I'm going to have 10 and 1/8. So step 1 is to rewrite my fraction vertically, and 1 and 2/5. Step 2 was to find my common denominator. And on this one, it's pretty big. It's 40. So 8 times 5 is 40. So if I times by 8, my top, I times by 8, and I get 16. Then 8 times 5 is 40, so 1 times 5 is 5. And my next step, if I go back up here, was number 3. If the first numerator is smaller than the second, I need to borrow. So I'm going to go into this one and change my color. Look at my numerators. My first numerator is smaller than my second numerator, so I need to borrow. So I'm going to borrow from my 10. The parts that I have, the denominator is 40. So I'm actually going to add 40 40ths because that would be 1 whole. So this is equal to 1 whole. So I have my 40 40ths. So now I add those two together. So my 5 40ths plus my 40 40ths is 45 40ths. And then I had to borrow from my whole number, which is what I just did. So now I have 9 instead of 10, and I have a improper fraction. So my 45 is bigger than my 40. Then I'm going to subtract 1 and 16 40ths that I had down here. Okay, and now I can actually do this. Okay, so now I follow my subtraction that we've done before. Okay, so I first do my fractions first. So I take my 45 minus 16, and I am not going to do that in my head because I know I have to borrow. So I have 15 minus 6 is 9, and 3 minus 1 is 2. So I have 29. My denominator stays the same, it's 40, and 9 minus 1 is 8. So I have 8 and 29 40ths. Now, you could simplify if you can on this one, which you can't because 29 is prime. But remember, we do not have to simplify because I don't grade you on that. So it's your choice. Okay, let's go to our next one. So we have 8 and 3/8 and 2 and 1/2. First step is to rewrite vertically. 8 and 3/8 minus 2 and 1/2. Step 2, find a common denominator for my fractions. So we're going to ignore those whole numbers right now, and we're going to find a common denominator. So if I skip count 2, 4, 6, 8, I know that 2 times 4 is 8, so my common denominator is 8. And 1 times 4 is 4. Okay, and then just to help me out so I don't have as much on here, I'm going to delete my other fractions so that it is a little bit less on there. Okay, all right, so now I have my common denominator. I'm looking at my numerators. I need to know if I need to borrow. So I look at my numerator. If my first numerator is smaller than my second one, I need to borrow. And 3 is smaller than 4. So I do need to borrow. So I'm going to go over to my 8 because that's the number that's smaller. My 8 is going to become a 7. And then I am going to add 8/8 because my numerator on the bottom is an 8. So to make 1 whole for this, I need 8/8. So let me draw my 1 around it. Okay, there's my 1. So now if I add them together, 3 plus 8 is 11. Then 8 stays the same because that's my denominator. I have 11/8. I borrowed, so I no longer have 8 as my whole number. I have 7. And then I'm going to subtract 2 and 4/8. Okay, now I subtract just like I did before. So I take 11 minus 4. So 11, 10, 9, 8, 7. My denominator stays the same. I have 8s. 7 minus 2 is 5. So I have 5 and 7/8. All right. Let's do another one. Oh, no. I left some things up there. Okay. First step is to rewrite my problem. So I have 5 and 3/4 minus 1/2. Ooh, I'm noticing I don't have a whole number on this one. Is it okay? Yeah. I can put a 0 here if I want to, or I can leave it without one. That's fine too. But I am going to put a 0 on mine just because I want to know that I have that whole number there. Oh no, it deleted me. We're going to keep it on my iPad. Okay, so now I've rewritten my fraction. I'm going to put my common denominator. So 2, I know it's 4, so 2 times 2 is 4, 1 times 2 is 2. So I have 3/4 and 2/4. So I need to figure out, do I need to borrow? So I'm going to go to my first fraction, look at my numerator. Is it bigger or smaller than my second fraction? And I'm noticing that my 3 is bigger than my 2. So that means I actually don't need to borrow. I can just start subtracting straight away. So I'm going to subtract my fractions first. So 3 minus 2 is 1. My denominator of 4 is going to stay the same. And then I'm going to subtract my whole numbers next. 5 minus 0 is 5. So I have 5 and 1/4. All right, I got another tricky one here. This one is a whole number, but it doesn't have a fraction. So first, I'm going to rewrite it vertically. I have 4, and I'm subtracting 1 3/4. Okay, so on this one, I don't have a fraction here. So I actually have 0 parts of the 4 wholes. So I can rewrite my fraction like this because there is no fraction, so my fraction is going to be 0. And how I got my denominator is I just used the same denominator that was at the bottom, because then I'm instantly making common denominators and I don't have to do any extra work. Okay, so I have a 0 of those parts, and then I keep my denominator the same as the one that's on the bottom fraction. Okay, so my next step will be to look at my fraction up here, and is my numerator smaller than my first numerator, smaller than my second numerator? And it is, so I'm going to need to borrow. So to borrow here, I'm going to take away from my 4, and I'm going to turn it into a 3, and then I'm going to add 4/4, because if I add 4/4, that is equivalent to 1 whole. Okay, so 0 plus 4 is 4. And then my denominator stays the same. And then my whole number we took away from the 4, so it's now a 3. Then I'm going to subtract 1 3/4. And now I can just subtract like I have been. So take my, so not cool, my iPad's being funky today. Okay, so I'm going to subtract my 4 minus 3, and I get a 1. My denominator stays the same, I get a 4. And a 3 minus 1 is a 2. Okay, so that one ends up that fraction. I didn't have any on these ones that I needed to simplify. But if you do get to a point where you have to simplify, you can, but you do not have to. Okay, I want to show you one more on the polypad. So we're going to do the one that we just did, 4 and then minus 1 3/4. Okay, so let me clear off my polypad. Okay, so on my polypad, I had the number 4, and then I was minusing 1 3/4. So 4 minus 1 3/4. So to do it to start, let's make my whole number. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then on the bottom, I had 1 and then 3/4. So I'm here and 3/4. Okay, so what we did was we said that we had 0 parts of fourths. So down here on your top fraction, there are no parts, right? So there's no fraction there, so that's why we can say that there's 0/4. So what we're going to do is we're going to make some fourths because I can't, if you have no parts, I can't take 3 away, right? So we need to make it so that we have some parts. So we're going to borrow from this fraction right here. And I am going to press split, and that's thirds, and that's fourths. So this is what I want to stick with. So I have my fourths here, okay? So now I am able to take away my 3/4. So here's my 3/4, and then I'm going to take away 3 from my top number. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I have now subtracted those, so I can take that off. Now I have my whole number, and I'm going to subtract my whole number from the top. So this one, take it away. It's gone. So now I've subtracted it from both the top and the bottom. And I am left with my answer, which is 2 wholes left and then 1/4. So I've taken a whole that's already existing and turned it into pieces, which is how I can borrow. Okay, so on mine, we also got 2 1/4. So this is the part right here where I am turning that whole number into a fraction. All right. So today, your practice that you are going to do, you are going to be on page 303 and 304. And you guys are going to be doing numbers 8 through 16 on page 303. And on page 304, you are going to choose 3. Okay? So that is your assignment today. Now, if you get to the point where you get stuck, that is okay. You are just going to do your very best to finish up what you need to. My face got frozen there. But you're going to do your very best to finish up what you can. I want you to at least try a couple on your practice today. And if you don't get there and you want to practice just the regular subtraction without borrowing, I'm going to leave a paper on the table for you. Okay? All right. Have a lovely